Yikes, man! This coronavirus seems scarier by the second. Oh well, let's get back to work. I mean, I work at home. It's not like this thing is gonna affect my work anyway. Uh-oh. Do I have a backup plan? This pandemic is nuts, dude! Man, I wonder what Disney is going to do with that Mulan remake. Hold on. When is that coming out? Oh, an update. Oh, what's this? Well, son of a fish. Gonna have to make another backup video. Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready for this. I got my mask. I got my hand sanitizer. And as long as I stay away from any strangers at least 6 feet apart, I should be safe in the theater. All I need now is Disney to release that remake, and I'll be good to go with my review. Of course it is. Of freaking course it is. The SpongeBob movie Sponge on the Run is coming to theaters exclusively in Canada. Good thing I came prepared. Okay, this is it. No more delays. It is just me at home with the Mulan remake on Disney+. There is nothing in my way now to stop me from making this review. All right now, Disney, come on, show me what you got. I did not ask to go through this obstacle course! Yes, after numerous of delays due to, unforeseen global events, the public can finally have their chance to see the long-awaited live-action remake of the 1998 animated film, Mulan. While it may not have been among Disney's list of animated masterpieces, there is no denying that this movie is considered to be one of Disney's most beloved nostalgic cult classics. To this day, millions of people could never forget the sheer joy that this feature gave them, whether it be by singing the memorable songs, admiring the beautiful animation, laugh with the hilarious characters, or even consider Mulan herself to be one of, if not Disney's strongest Disney princess. I mean, how many of these girls could legit say that they saved their entire country? Even with me, while not personally my favorite Disney film, or even my favorite from Disney's Renaissance era, I still find it to be a great movie, and I know I'll have a good time if I choose to watch it again. But I know for a fact that I'm not the only one who thinks that, and so does Disney. In fact, with the combining knowledge of the public's nostalgia, how the company can make stupidly huge profits by remaking their animated classics into live-action blockbusters, and the ever-growing Chinese market in the movie industry, a live-action Mulan seemed inevitable to be Disney's next mega hit. And to their credit, they sure do know how to market the feature by telling audiences that this is gonna be epic.
A warrior.
And to be honest, those trailers were actually so effective that they even got to me a little bit. Yes, I actually was a bit intrigued to see how this movie would turn out, considering that it seemed very promising as a Disney live-action remake because you got some of the familiarity of Mulan, but also you got something that feels fresh and new at the same time. Something that seems like it would be a little bit more serious, and it would emphasize a lot more onto the action, especially with all the fighting scenes and Mulan taking down the Huns one by one in a PG-13 style. But then again, we are still talking about a Disney live-action remake, and considering their reputation and their track record, I need to go and take that with a whole canister of salt. But anyways, now it is time that I have actually seen the movie. And after watching it and seeing it for like what it truly is, there is one thing that I gotta admit that really did fascinate me. Because this remake, believe it or not, is actually 30 minutes longer than the animated version. and yet it somehow offers me so much less. I'll give it credit that it is an improvement compared to the other Disney live-action remakes. It doesn't copy too much from the original to the point of feeling like watching the exact same film like The Lion King, Aladdin, or Beauty and the Beast, and it doesn't throw in new elements that are completely broken down and destroy the feature's foundation like Maleficent and Dumbo. However, the biggest difference between the remake and the original of Disney's Mulan is that the live-action version takes away a lot of elements from the animated one in order to make itself more mature. Meaning that there are no musical numbers, about half of the recognizable characters are replaced with the Order of the Phoenix, and even the comedy is mostly absent with the exception of some of the minor slapstick from the soldiers. I understand how some sacrifices would have to be necessary in order to be different from the original, but the remake doesn't do anything to fill in the parts that they just threw out. All that's left is just a hollow shell that's trying to tell the story of Mulan with very little substance to actually offer. Even the actors can be unimpressive and present a blander version of the characters they're supposed to play, delivering performances that often feel emotionless and so wooden that they would have been more suitable for a Pinocchio reboot.
Need a hand, little man?
Insult me again and you'll taste the tip of my blade.
But the biggest problem with all these sacrifices is that it ends up taking away so much of the identity of Disney's Mulan. What many people remember the most from that film is the catchy songs, the beloved personalities, and the fast-paced comedy. Sure, some could say that's just copying the old Disney formula, but Mulan is one of those films that knew how to make itself stand out from the rest, thus becoming, like I said before, one of Disney's biggest animated cult favorites. And when those elements are taken out with next to nothing to replace them with, the film mostly becomes dull with little that could be memorable or be engaging to see how things will ultimately turn out. And while there are a few nods to the original, they can be hilariously corny with the way they're so clumsily obvious about it instead of, actually being useful to the plot.
It is what is best for our family.
Yes, I will bring honor to us all.
Also, this movie is just crazy for the song Reflection, and the soundtrack is ready to have that on repeat, so get ready to hear that a few times. But there is one thing that the movie does try to do more so than just advancing a boring plot by unenthusiastically pushing it forward. Along Mulan's journey, there is the traditional theme of the story about gender roles. How one girl decided to go and break all the rules in order to save her father by joining the army and end up saving the entire dynasty. On one hand, this theming can get annoying real fast, especially when it keeps on repeating the message that women can do a man's job too, maybe even better. But then again, I can't really fault it for that because that's the only thing it has of substance it could play around with and explore its meaning while it's telling the story without the parts that actually make it fun. It's not the best, nor is it well executed, but at least it's something it can have to help give the remake its own unique voice. Also, the theme does come with possibly the best edition of the remake. Remember in the original how the villain has this pet bird that's by his side? Well, the remake gave the Falcon a major upgrade and turned it into a witch named Xian Lang. Not only is she the villain's powerful assistant, but she relates to Mulan in a strong way where her life is very tough and filled with exile mainly because she is a woman with great chi. That's the movie's version of magic, by the way, who cannot simply follow the traditional rules of how a woman in ancient China should live. With her frequent interactions with Mulan, she actually helps give the movie some layers and deliver some strong development for both herself and the lead. As she helps Mulan to battle and fulfill her purpose by being her true self, she also contemplates about her role and if she should even use her chi to serve under Bori Khan.
You will die pretending to be something you're not. Yet here I stand, proof that there is a place for people like us.
So, like I said, the whole being a woman thing can get annoying at times. Yes, I understand that. But it's honestly the only thing of substance that this movie has, while the rest of the storytelling elements have next to nothing. It takes away a lot of the enjoyable things, or even almost all of the enjoyable things from the original Disney's Mulan. The unenthusiasm of the actors make the characters in return feel so uninterested to be in the film in the first place, to the point that audiences have a very hard time to even care about the characters themselves when they don't even care in the first place. And then you got the plot itself that feels like it's just solely copying from the other Mulan stories, or the other Mulan adaptations, or the source material and stuff like that, where it feels like it doesn't truly understand what makes the original poem so timeless and so inspiring for many centuries. It just doesn't seem to fully understand, and it's just like slowly but surely moving forward without a single piece of care, and it's just like manufacturedly moving forward. Then it feels like a passion project from an artist. So honestly, it's kind of funny the fact that the movie would mention that it has a lot of chi, and yet very little of it was actually used in the story or in the writing itself. But then again, a lot of that chi that they did actually focus on, at least it is pretty effective in order to make the movie look appealing. If there is one thing this movie did the best when adapting from the animated film, it's the strong use of color. Of course, as an animated feature, it is easy to make the colors stand out, especially in the case of Mulan, where the animation emulates the style of Chinese artwork to keep the design simpler and visually give the colors a bigger role. In the remake, colors still play a significant part of the movie, taking the natural elements of the backgrounds and make them more saturated that can also help set the mood of the scene or say a lot about who these characters are. Not to mention that there are even some times when the colors would be all over the place thanks to the costumes, like in Mulan's village. So at best, this movie can be some good eye candy if you look past all the cultural inaccuracies. But it's not just from the colors that can make this a bit of a visual spectacle. There are other elements that help enhance the experience. These include the CG mainly being just okay. They're not great, but admittedly there isn't a whole lot of it to really complain about, and the cinematography can be breathtaking with great cinematic shots of the characters' surroundings. Granted, some of them can feel like it's trying to show off its stupidly big budget, but the movie does make the most out of it to capture those strong-looking moments. But then there is the action. If there is one thing the movie focuses on the most, making so much sacrifices to present itself as a more mature live-action remake, it is how it puts a lot more emphasis on Mulan using her martial arts skills to take down the Ruren warriors. This is where the filmmakers did everything they could to turn this into an authentic Chinese movie, following the country's cinematic rules to help present the tone and the setting of the feature. In a way, this is Disney trying to make a movie mainly for Chinese audiences. However, if you're not familiar with Chinese filmmaking, this could probably be the part for you that could either make or break this picture. You could either be completely amazed at the elaborate choreography and all the creative techniques being used throughout the fight scenes that make them highly engaging and intense, or the fighting can be some of the goofiest ever put on film, featuring the existence of gravity being questionable, and catching arrows and deflecting weapons with your arms and legs is a cinch. At this point, I'm sure there are a lot of people that want to make their dishonor on you, dishonor on your remake comment, and shame the movie for having inferior standards to the original animated film. But to be very honest, I can't really say that I hate this, or at least in terms of the movie itself. And I mean, yeah, sure, it's not great, it's not even that good, and I think it's pretty much a given that it's not as good as the original animated film. I think we all know that even before going in. But to its credit, at least it does try to not make the same mistakes as the other Disney live-action remakes. As a movie on its own, the 2020 remake of Mulan can be a boring experience with little to offer. Sure, the visuals can be quite lovely to look at and provide some fun action, but with an unengaging story with little substance and minimal effort in the acting that result in the characters that are hard to be motivated for, they ultimately make the movie not necessarily a bad one, but something that can be very easy to forget. However, as a remake of a beloved animated film from Disney, there are things that are both admirable and disappointing from it. It sucks that they took away so much of what made the 1998 film enjoyable and unique, but at least it doesn't make the same mistakes as the more hated Disney remakes and can even introduce some cool new ideas that make some moments a bit more interesting that you wouldn't find in the cartoon. One thing I can say with no problem is that this is not worth paying a premium fee on top of what you already pay for Disney+, so there's no rush to go check this movie out. But if you ever are interested in taking a look, I recommend treating this more as just an action-packed Chinese period piece more than a live-action remake to Disney's Mulan. Any expectations for similarities with that movie will find nothing but disappointment, and it'll make it easier to just take it as it is. As for giving this a rating, I don't think I'll remember this one for long, even if it's not really bad or anything, so I'll just give it a 6 out of 10. It's slightly one of the better Disney live-action remakes, but definitely not one of the memorable ones. However, there is one more thing that I need to go and discuss, and considering the subject matter, it is honestly unavoidable. Even long before this movie was released, it already had a very significant amount of backlash against it. And it doesn't have to do with anything related to the fact that it's yet another Disney live-action remake, or that it's something that the movie itself has done, or anything like that. It's not because of the movie itself, but rather, it more has to do with a significant event that the movie somehow found itself being tangled up upon. So, with that said, let's talk about the Hong Kong protests. To quickly summarize the situation the best I can, in early 2019, China introduced a new extradition bill that would allow the Chinese police force to go after alleged criminals, which they made criminal to be a very broad term in this case, anywhere in the country's land, including Hong Kong, which has a system different from China that gives its citizens more freedom and autonomy, or as they call it, one country, two systems. This resulted in hundreds of thousands of people to go in the streets to demand that this bill should be taken down, since it would threaten their independence and could cause the authoritarian laws of mainland China to sneak in and take over the region. Unsurprisingly, China was having none of it and sent the police and threatened to use military force in an attempt to silence the cries of the protesters while they tried to take their freedom away, even to the point where the police had to use brutal violence and countless of arrests in order to literally beat them up to submission. Gee, I wonder if the Americans find all this to be familiar. As time moved on, the clash between the protesters and the police only escalated, and while Hong Kong may have seen a small victory in November with the pro-democracy party winning by a landslide, and tensions easing up due to COVID-19 coming into the picture, a new law was established in May of 2020 that's pretty much like the old bill, which led to even more protests and even more police trying to take them down with violence and arrests, now with the new law on their side. And as of the release of this review, things are looking dark for the people of Hong Kong, as their freedom and democracy is now only hanging by a thread. Now, you might be wondering, what the fridge does this have to do with the Mulan remake? Well, going back to August of 2019, during the heat of the protests, the movie star, Liu Yifei, made a social media post stating that she's in support of the police in the matter. Once news caught wind of it, it sparked international outrage, and people all over the world were saying to boycott the movie in support of the protesters. For the government of China, they saw this as an opportunity and ended up using the film as a political weapon, where one's opinion on the Disney remake is also a stance on the issue. So the battle can even be found on social media, where the hashtag boycott Mulan protesters are fighting against the government-controlled hashtag support Mulan trend. And this is why I can't help but feel like this has to be the unluckiest Disney live-action remake ever made. Because all the backlash and the setbacks this movie faced is because of reasons beyond of its control. Rather it be because of a global pandemic causing it to be constantly delayed throughout the year 2020, or because of an authoritarian government using the movie as a political tool in order to take down protesters fighting for their freedom, all because of the main character, because of Mulan herself, just could not shut her mouth. And from there, it may sound crazy, but I can't help but feel like I'm a bit sorry for the movie. You know, I kind of feel sorry for what happened to this movie. And yes, I know, this is a $200 million blockbuster whose sole purpose is to go and to capitalize on the nostalgia of a more than 20-year-old animated film. And yes, say what you will about the movie, say whatever opinion you may have on it, but let's be honest, no movie out there deserves to have this kind of fate, especially when most of its biggest controversies were not even its fault in the first place. I know there are plenty of people out there that want to say dishonor on this movie, but let's be honest, it already got enough dishonor even before it got released. What the fridge? Hold on a sec. Disney under fire again for giving special thanks to government that let them film Mulan in the Chinese province where they hold Muslim concentration. What the fridge?
Yes, I will bring honor to us all.